Life on a hell forge. Even the phrase is a cruel joke. You call this living? Imagine a world where the sky is eternally choked by black, toxic clouds belched from titanic smokestacks. A world where the very air tastes of iron and ash, where every breath carries the sting of burnt blood and charred flesh. Welcome to my home, a fallen forge world devoted entirely to the Dark Mechanicum's tender mercies. Welcome to the Hell Forge. Grab a lungful of that scorching air and try not to cough. The overseers hate weakness. They say the Imperium of man is hell. Cute. They've clearly never walked the slag-charred foundries of a Dark Mechanicum forge world. Here, hell isn't a metaphor. It's the assembly line I've been chained to for as long as I can remember, the infernal factory cathedrals that dominate every horizon, and the nightmare regime that sees us slaves as nothing more than organic fuel. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start my daily routine, such as it is, one day in the life of an insignificant drudge on a hell forge. Don't worry, it's packed with excitement and joy. That's sarcasm, by the way. You'll be hearing a lot of that. It's the only luxury I can still afford. Morning. Shift start in the endless factory. I don't remember what a sunrise looks like. Here we wake to the blare of klaxon sirens and the jolt of shock prods. There's no dawn or dusk in this place. The smog above turns the sky into a perpetual murk of twilight reds and blacks. Time is a haze. The concepts of morning or evening barely apply when the forge fires never cease and the darkness never lifts. Still, by habit, I'll call the start of my work cycle morning. It makes me feel just a little more human, clinging to some routine. My eyes snap open in the dormitory bunk. If you can call a rusted metal slab a bunk. A cacophony of distant machinery is already reverberating through the walls. Honestly, I'm not sure it ever stopped while I slept. Did I sleep? Hard to tell. Nightmares and reality blend together here. The air is hot and foul, heavy with chemical fumes and the coppery tang of blood. It's like sleeping in a butcher's trash incinerator. Except the butchers here sometimes toss in a few live bodies for good measure. Pleasant, I know. Around me, dozens of other slaves haul themselves up from their brief repose. In the dim red emergency lighting, the only illumination we get, flickering, ominous, and just enough to avoid tripping over each other, I see shapes stirring. Human figures, mostly. Some of my comrades aren't entirely human anymore. The constant exposure to warp-tainted pollutants and radiation does wonders for one's physique. If you consider extra limbs, tumors, or peculiar growths to be wonders, one fellow across from me has a curled horn sprouting from his brow. Another's skin has a greenish pallor and is covered in rash-like boils. Mutation is common on a hell forge, especially for those of us without the protection of augmetic filter implants. The Dark Mechanicum doesn't particularly mind mutants. A body's a body as long as it can hold a wrench or push a cart. They only purge you when you become too deformed to work, or when the mutation turns you into a chaos spawn that tries to eat your coworkers. That's an ugly cleanup duty, trust me. I swing my legs over the bunk and hiss at the sting in my joints. Everything aches. The gravity on this world is slightly heavy, or maybe it's just the exhaustion weighing me down. We don't get cushions or padding. My back is one giant bruise from the metal slab. But hey, at least I woke up at all small mercies, right? Another day above ground, well, above the molten foundry pits. Another chance to serve my beloved masters. Yes, that's more sarcasm. It's my favorite defense mechanism, second only to not thinking about anything too deeply. As I pull on my threadbare work vest and trousers, more patches than original fabric, I glance around to ensure nothing was stolen off my body in the night. You'd be surprised what desperate people will take. Prosthetic limb, extra food ration, if you had one. The very boots off your feet? If someone thinks they can barter it for a sip of clean water or avoid a beating, they'll try it. My boots are still here, thank the dark gods. The left one has a hole in the sole, and the right's missing half a lace. But they're mine. One of the few things I can call mine, besides my scars and cynicism. On the neighboring bunk, old Garen is wheezing himself awake. He's been here longer than most. Long enough that his hair's gone white, what hair he hasn't lost to clumps of radiation fallout, and his left eye has been replaced with a crude bionic. Not out of kindness, he lost the real eye to a flying scrap shard years ago, and the Magos in charge decided it was more efficient to plug in a mechanical eye than to let a useful slave go blind. Efficiency. That's one thing you can't fault the Dark Mechanicum for. They don't waste anything. Not scrap, not time, and certainly not human labor. If patching you up with metal keeps you productive, they'll do it. If feeding you an extra bowl of protein gruel will squeeze another week of work out of your dying body, they'll force it down your throat. If you collapse and simply can't be fixed, well, there's the flesh recyclers for that. We'll get to those later, patients. There's so much fun to cover. We don't talk much in the mornings. We're too tired and there's nothing good to say. A few coughs, groans, maybe a muttered curse or prayer. Actually, I do hear one voice softly murmuring the Emperor's prayer in a corner. Idiot. I cringe and hope none of the Overseer skull drones are listening. Publicly invoking the Emperor, especially here, is a fast way to get your tongue cut out, or worse. Sure, deep inside, I still pray to him on Terra sometimes. Old habits die hard, and sometimes a hopeless prayer is all you've got. But you'd never catch me doing it out loud. Not after I saw what happened to Loran last year. They caught him carving Aquila into a scrap piece as a lucky charm. The tech priests made an example. They branded his back with the cog inverted, that skull and gear symbol of theirs, to cover the heresy, and then they turned him into a servitor. Lobotomized, brain wiped, half machine. He still works in our section, actually. His corpse shambles around on piston legs doing basic tasks. He's technically still here, but the laughing, hopeful man we knew is long gone. Now he's just another mindless automaton with cables for veins. I sometimes wonder if that's better or worse than being conscious in this nightmare. I'm selfishly glad it wasn't me either way. A siren wails again, this one a shriller tone that means shift commencement in 5 minutes. A recorded binaric voice, harsh, metallic, speaking lingua technis, blares from vox horns. ++ begin work cycle 2987 beta. All labor units report to assigned stations. Praise the Omnisaya ++, followed by a burst of static and an obscene screech that might be their idea of a hymn. Did I mention the Dark Mechanicum still uses a lot of the old Adeptus Mechanicus trappings? They don't really worship the Omnisaya, not as the loyal Mechanicus do at least, but they like to throw the word around mockingly. Or maybe some of them do still revere the machine god in their own twisted way as just another face of chaos. I'm not sure. Theology isn't my strong suit these days. Surviving 1 hour to the next is. I splutter, clear my throat of the oily phlegm. It's black, always black in the morning from all the soot I breathe in, and shuffle out of the dorm. No breakfast today. Not that it's a guarantee any day. If the masters think we need more energy, they allocate a nutrient-paced ration at shift start. If not, well, work on an empty stomach and hope you don't pass out. The pasty corpse starch mush tastes like cardboard mixed with copper. Rumor says it's recycled from, former workers. I try not to think about that as I choke it down on the days we get it. This morning, nothing. Looks like we're skipping straight to business. Fine by me. The gruel gives me diarrhea half the time anyway. As we file out through the steel archway, I catch a glimpse of a couple enforcers watching us. These are human, or once were. Towering brutes with crude bionics, carrying shock staves. Their eyes are glazed from combat stims. They herd us wordlessly, a quick jab here or there to prod the stragglers. I've felt that bite before. Sends a jolt that locks your muscles and drops you twitching. Effective, but they prefer not to overuse it. A dead slave is one less worker, after all. Most of us limp into line without needing encouragement. From dorm to factory floor is a short trip that tells you everything about this place's aesthetic. Picture a labyrinth of metal corridors, each one either broiling hot or bone-chilling cold, depending on the pipes running alongside. Overhead, lumen strips flicker erratically, some shattered, showering sparks or leaking weird energies. When you see green witch light dripping from a conduit, you stay away. That's warp runoff from whatever experiments the Magi are doing upstairs. I've seen a man touch a glowing green puddle once. He screamed as his hand aged 100 years in a second, then crumbled to dust. The tech priests were delighted. They scooped up the dust, muttering about time fractals. Us, we stepped around that spot real careful for weeks until maintenance sealed it. The corridors don't follow sane architecture. They twist, rise, and fall without logic, sometimes intersecting at impossible angles. That's the hallmark of a hellforge. Nothing is built for human comfort or even Euclidean sense. Forge cities rise in chaotic fashion, whole sections jumbled atop one another. New additions jut out at weird angles, old halls dead-end or drop off into pits where the ground opened up. It's as if the entire world is alive and convulsing, which, considering the warp energies coursing through it, might not be far from the truth. We have maps posted on the walls, mostly outdated, but honestly you navigate by memory and luck. If one day a corridor is collapsed or simply gone, you find another route or you're marked tardy and punished. I once walked the same route to my station for months. Then one morning I turned a corner and found a solid wall of fleshy stuff, throbbing and oozing, completely blocking the way. The forge had grown something overnight. I still don't know if it was a mutant growth from a chemical spill or a literal demon manifesting. I took another path and never looked back. Just another Hellforge remodeling project, courtesy of Chaos. As we pass Junction 7G, I see the walls covered in scrap code graffiti glowing runes that squirm if you stare too long. They definitely weren't there yesterday. Unholy symbols of the dark gods, warding sigils to bind entities, or maybe just art by some twisted tech cultist. Who knows? All I know is they occasionally burn new marks into our flesh too. See this scar on my forearm. It's an 8-pointed star, the Chaos symbol. Got that souvenir when the local warlord declared a day of devotion. Every slave was branded to remind us who we belong to. Fun times. The brand got infected, dirty iron brand, go figure, and I worked through a fever for a week. I'm one of the lucky ones. I survived. 2 bunks down, a young woman died of sepsis from her brand. She got fed to the flesh vats, and the rest of us got an extra ladle of protein broth that evening. Coincidence? I think not. Waste not, want not, as the Mechanicus says. The forge floor work till you drop, then work some more. Eventually, we spill out onto the main factory floor of Sector 17. And by floor, I mean an immense cavern of industry that extends farther than the eye can see, both horizontally and vertically. It's a titanic space where multiple manufacturum lines intertwine. Conveyor belts rattle with freshly forged munitions the size of hab blocks. Overhead cranes swing parts of hulking demon engines in assembly. In the distance, towering furnaces spew pillars of fire and smoke. The heat hits you like a fist. Even across the chamber, I can see the hellish glow of molten metal rivers and the silhouettes of crucible tenders tending the smelters. The noise is beyond deafening, a constant thunder of machinery, the roar of flames, the grind of gears. You have to shout to be heard. Not that casual chatting is encouraged or even possible here. Communication is mostly frantic hand signals and the occasional scream. I taste metal on my tongue with every breath. Each inhalation feels like licking a battery and an ashtray at the same time. My ears stopped ringing ages ago only because I think I've lost some hearing. Merciful in a way. Sector 17 is my assigned work zone. Specifically, I'm on Forge Line 9 today, assembling heavy artillery shells for some enormous cannon. Likely destined for the siege guns of a traitor legion or the warp cannons of a demon engine. Last week it was tank treads, the week before wiring harnesses for dropship bombs. They shift us around as needed. Multi-role servitors of flesh, one overseer called us. Adaptable, replaceable. Forge Line 9 runs along a narrow catwalk beside a chasm of grinding gears. If you slip off the edge, well, you become a red smear and a memory. We lost 2 people last month when an overhead gantry's bolt sheared and it swayed, knocking them clean into the gear pit. Didn't even find pieces to bury. The machine just kept on turning, undeterred. The only thing that bothered the overseers was the momentary jam of their precious gears. They had the gall to scold us for contaminating the machinery with our blood, as if we fell on purpose. Their solution? Install spiked railings last week, not to catch us, mind you, but to make sure if we fall again, we break up faster and don't clog the gears. Safety first. I take my spot on the line. Immediately, a heavy shell casing clunks down from the conveyor above onto the workbench in front of me. It's the length of my torso, etched with chaotic sigils. My job, insert the payload and attach the firing fuse. Sounds simple? It is, theoretically, except the payload is a canister filled with warp-infused acidic gel, and if I jostle it too much, it might eat through anything, including me. And the fuse, a foot-long spike of brass, is inscribed with some dark ritual script. Occasionally, those runes glow or whisper unspeakable things. The guy next to me swears he saw a fuse sprout tiny little arms and strangle a worker last year. I believe him. Nothing's too weird here, so I handle the munitions gingerly, trying not to think about it. Slide canister in, twist, hear the click. Carefully attach fuse, locking ring on tight. Slide it down the line, repeat, thousands of times. The line never stops unless something breaks, or an overseer halts it for adjustments, which is rare. They prefer continuous output. We have quotas per cycle. If we fall behind, no rations or worse punishments. If we consistently meet quota, maybe they only beat one of us instead of 2. Yay, incentive. I've got my method down to a rhythm, not too slow, not too fast. Fast invites accidents. There's a pressure sensor under my station that monitors output. If it senses I'm slacking, it'll send an alert. Everything is monitored in some way, by cogitators, by camera skulls, or by the all-seeing eyes of the tech priests and their data spirit familiars. It's like being watched by ghosts and machines at all times. Privacy? Ha! Even our thoughts don't feel private, with how the warp sometimes plays on your mind here. A few minutes in, I hear a shrill yelp from 2 stations over. Someone fumbled a shell. It dropped and cracked. A hiss of green vapor wafts up. "Mask! Mask!" I shout reflexively, grabbing the rebreather hanging at my hip and slapping it over my face. Others do the same in a practiced motion. The poor bastard who dropped the shell isn't so quick. The cloud of corrosive warp chemicals engulfs him. Through the green haze, I catch a glimpse of flesh melting off bone and a scream cut mercifully short. The gas disperses upward, its corrosive kiss leaving pockmarks on metal surfaces and eating holes in our clothes. I feel a sizzle on my exposed forearm. A drop burned me. But I'll live. The unlucky worker, on the other hand, is now a puddle of liquefied organs and half a skeleton. The stench is indescribable, like rotten eggs mixed with vinegar and death. We keep working. No one stops. Within seconds, clanking servo-automatons slide over multi-limbed, spider-like robots to clean the spillage. One extends a nozzle and literally sucks up the remains of the worker along with the chemical sludge, presumably to be refined or disposed of. Maybe to be fed into our rations, who knows? I wouldn't put it past them. A second automaton welds a quick patch over the cracked floor plating. The assembly line never even slowed. The overseer in charge doesn't bother addressing us. Only acknowledgement of the incident is a tinny Vox announcement overhead. Section 3 casualty. Output maintained. All hail the Forge. Hail the Forge indeed. As they would say on ancient Terra, another day, another dollar. Except here, the currency is suffering and business is booming. I catch the eye of Janelle on the opposite line for a split second as we both reset to work. There's a flicker of shared horror, and then we smother it. If we're caught reacting emotionally, they'll mark us for psycho-conditioning. Gotta stay numb and keep those hands moving. Later, maybe in the barracks, someone will quietly lament the dead man. I think his name was Orel. He was new, captured in the last raid. He cried for his mother on his first day. Perhaps his fate was a mercy then. That's how twisted our mindset has become. An accidental death in acid is considered one of the kinder exits from this life. Meet the Masters from a safe distance. While I work, let me introduce you to our beloved caretakers, the Dark Mechanicum overseers and tech priests. See that tall, spindly figure up on the metal balcony, moving along the railing above us like a spider made of steel? That's Magos Dentrex, the sector overseer. He's one of the higher-ranking heretics, tech priests, in this Hellforge. He's probably about 80% machine at this point. His lower body is a set of mechanical legs that resemble a centipede's body, letting him scuttle along the high gantries to observe the laborers. His upper torso retains a vaguely human shape, draped in tattered red and black robes of the Mechanicus, though multiple servo arms and mechadendrites, metal tentacle limbs, sprout from his back, each tipped with tools, claws, drills, a buzzing circular saw, even a wicked-looking syringe. His face, well, I've only seen it once and that was enough. Half of it is a polished chrome mask with a single glowing optic lens. The other half is flesh, but pallid and augmetic laced, with tubes pumping some foul fluid into where his neck veins would be. One organic eye peers out, yellowed and cold. He has no mouth that I can see. He speaks in clicking binaric cant, or through a Vox augmeter that gives his voice a resonant, machine-like timbre. Magos Dentrex glides along, inspecting us far below. I feel his gaze pass over me and instinctively straighten up my posture, working as perfectly as I can. When a Dark Magos is watching, you do not give them a reason to single you out. I've seen what happens when they're displeased. If you're lucky, it's just a crack of an electro whip from one of the lesser overseers. If you're unlucky, the Magos might decide you're defective. Dentrex, for instance, loves his experiments. One poor soul, Kuron, was lagging on output one day. Maybe from illness, maybe exhaustion. Dentrex descended on him like a bird of prey. Next thing we knew, Kuron was being hoisted up by two of those tentacles, screaming. The Magos proclaimed him inefficient flesh, and in the same breath, plunged a syringe from his mechadendrite into Kuron's neck, pumping some concoction in. Kuron convulsed and started mutating, right there in midair. His arms elongated, face bubbled, mind broke. They turned him into a mindless, ravening chaos spawn on the spot. Then Dentrex released the flailing abomination onto the factory floor as a test. We had to drop our tasks and help the security drones corral and destroy our former friend, who was now a spiked, tentacled horror trying to devour us. 5 other slaves died in the process. At the end, the Magos just nodded and took notes on his data slate. Improved formula, moderate success, I recall his metallic voice echoing. That was his takeaway. We lost 6 people and half a day's quota, but he got his data. That's what life means to the Dark Mechanicum, expendable test subjects. Just cogs in their grand experiment. I sometimes wonder if we're valued less than the machines, since at least machines are hard to replace. Us? There are always more coming in on the next Chaos raiding ship. So yeah, if a Magos is watching, I make damn sure to look busy and competent. Up on the balcony, Dentrex pauses, his single red optic probably scanning output reports that stream across his retinal display. Satisfied, or simply bored, he skitters onward, heading to oversee another section. I exhale the breath I'd been holding. It's odd, I'd almost prefer an angry overseer screaming at us, like I've heard the Imperium's taskmasters do. At least that is human, emotional. The Dark Mechanicum are often eerily detached. They see flesh and they just don't care. Why would they? Most of them shed their humanity both figuratively and literally long ago. We are statistics to them, organic machines to be calibrated or scrapped. There's an old joke among us slaves, a dark joke, naturally. What's the only thing that scares a Dark Magos? Running out of spare parts. And by spare parts, we mean both mechanical components and human bodies. They need both for their work. We fuel the furnaces, we carry the loads, we even sometimes become components in their creations. Yup, you heard that right. Some of those demon engines have living nervous systems as part of their circuitry. Someone's screaming soul might be inside that tank or serving as the machine's brain. If you think that's horrifying, well, welcome to Hellforge. Tools, tasks, and a dash of tech heresy. The work itself can vary day by day, but it's always grueling. In the Imperium's Forge worlds, I've heard they have safety rituals, machine spirit appeasements, careful maintenance schedules, approved STC patterns, and so on. Here, under the Dark Mechanicum, the motto is more like, if it works, use it. If it explodes, oh well, try something else. They aren't hampered by fear of innovation or by devotion to the Omnissiah's strictures. That means the technology around us is a bizarre mix of hyper-advanced and crudely demonic. On my assembly line alone, the conveyor system is powered by a bound demon engine. I kid you not. There's a lesser demon chained in the gear housing. I've seen it, a flicker of hateful eyes and fangs behind the grate, that turns the gears incessantly. In exchange, they probably feed it souls or agony. Maybe that's why accidents like Orel's death by acid don't bother them, might even feed the machine spirit, if you can still call it that, running this line. Creepy, right? When a machine spirit literally is a demon, things get weird. Sometimes the line runs too fast or slow for no mechanical reason, and we know the thing is in a foul mood, so we toss a scrap of meat or a cup of blood into the intake as an offering, and it purrs back to normal. On Loyalist Forge worlds, you'd chant a prayer and oil the gears. Here, you bribe the monster in the machine. Adapt and survive. My own station has a half-functional servo arm, an articulated robotic appendage meant to help lift the heavy shells. It broke months ago, and the priests haven't bothered to fix it, so now it's just twitching occasionally. pretty much useless. Thus, I rely on my God Emperor-given arms to lift each 100 kilograms shell. My spine hates me for it, but what choice is there? If I complain, I might get a strength enhancement, which could be anything from crude bionics grafted onto me in a painful surgery, to being fed a concoction of stims that burn out my heart in a year, to being merged with a demonic parasite that makes me super strong but slowly eats my sanity. No thanks, I'll manage with what I have. "Hey, keep it moving," snarls a voice to my left. That would be Taskmaster Rigo, a human enforcer assigned to this section. He's a big slab of a man with augmentic arms. Unlike the Magos, Rigo still has plenty of meat on him, which just means he can empathize enough to relish our suffering. He walks the line with a shock whip coiled in his hand and an auto pistol on his hip. The Dark Mechanicum often employ mortals like him to supervise the lowest levels: cultists, failed tech, acolytes, or simply cruel thugs who enjoy power. Rigo was a pit fighter before he got in with the Dark Mechanicum, or so the rumor goes. Now he gets his kicks tormenting us. At least he's predictable. Shout, whip, threaten. I know how to deal with that. Numb compliance, yes sir, no sir. It's the ones like Dentrex who say nothing and then suddenly remove your organs for a test that truly terrify me. I nod to Rigo and slightly increase my pace, muscling the next shell into place. My arms burn with the effort, muscles trembling. I've been going non-stop for Emperor knows how long. 2 hours. 4. Time blurs. Sweat pours down my face, stinging my eyes with grime. The heat from the machinery is relentless. At least on a normal Forge world, you might have breaks or shifts. Here, breaks are when something breaks. Otherwise, you work until you literally collapse, or until the quota is met and a new crew rotates in. They often cycle crews every 12 hours, theoretically, but I've done 20-hour shifts when demand is high and new labor is short. And demand is always high. We produce an endless supply of weapons and ammo for the long war. Chaos, Space Marine warbands, demonic legions, dark apostates. They all hunger for our output. It's grimly funny. The Imperium would kill all of us as heretics if they could, yet our labor is basically the engine that allows half the damn wars to continue. Without Hellforges, the forces of chaos would eventually run out of guns and tanks to throw at the Emperor's realm. So we're a necessary evil to them. Of course, that doesn't make our lives any easier. It just means the Inquisition would as soon exterminate us as rescue us. We're on nobody's side but our own, and even that's fleeting. Psst, comes a whisper from my right. It's Delissa, a young woman assigned to the station beside mine, assembling detonator caps. We're not really supposed to talk, but she risked it. I flick my eyes toward her briefly. Her face is smeared with soot, hair shorn to stubble to avoid it catching in machinery. Despite the filth, she has kind eyes, too kind for this place. She shouldn't even be here. I think she was born on this Hellforge, raised in a slave creche. All she's known is this life, yet somehow she's not completely broken inside. She'll still smile or hum a half-remembered tune quietly when things aren't too dire. Why do the gentle ones always end up in hells like these? What? I hiss back under my breath, still working furiously to avoid Rigo's notice. She doesn't look up, fingers deftly fitting caps. Look, she nudges her chin ever so slightly towards a far corner of the factory floor near the base of one of the furnace towers. I steal a glance when I can. It's far through a haze of smoke and heat distortions, but I see what she means. A group of figures, not slaves, moving along the lower level. Even from here, their silhouettes are distinctive, tall, armored, walking with a predatory confidence. Chaos Space Marines. My heart skips. God Emperor, Dark Gods. Damn it, doesn't matter. Those monsters are here, on the floor. It's not uncommon that warbands or their champions visit Hellforges to oversee orders or bully the tech priests for faster production. But it's always nerve-wracking. 8-foot super soldiers genetically modified for war and corrupted by chaos. Yeah, that tends to keep the workforce on edge. One of them is clad in Baroque power armor painted a deep crimson with brass trim. World Eater colors, I think. Followers of Khorne. Of course, it had to be Khorne devotees down here in the forges. The Blood God's followers love weapons and bloodshed, and what better place for both? Next to him is a hulking form in darker armor, marked by tentacle-like cables writhing from his backpack. A warpsmith, likely, which is basically a chaos tech marine liaising with the Dark Mechanicum. He's probably here to check on a shipment of demon engines, or to bargain for some custom monstrosity. 2 others follow, lugging something on a pallet, maybe a sealed container of supplies, or captives. Sometimes they pay in fresh slaves. We slaves all keep our heads down as the Astartes walk by on the ground level. Even Rigo steps back, bowing his head obsequiously as they pass near his station. Smart man, a Chaos Marine would squash him like an insect if offended. I focus intently on my task, praying none of those warriors take interest in us. Most times they don't. We're beneath their notice. But occasionally a bored Chaos Marine might kill a slave just to test his chainsword, or to make a point about motivation. Happens more often than I'd like. I clamp a fuse in place, silently reciting a mantra in my head. Thrones, please keep going, keep going. A clatter. One of the workers down the line, an older guy, visibly trembles at the sight of the Marines and drops a tool. It clanks loudly. In the relative lull that fell as the Marines' approach made everyone quiet, that sound is like a bell tolling. The group of Chaos Marines halts. I feel my blood turn to ice. One of them, the red-armored World Eater with a chain axe at his side, turns his horn-helmed head toward the line. Even from 50 feet away, I feel his gaze like a physical weight. He steps over, each footstep thumbing. My compatriots shrink back instinctively. The old man who dropped the tool, Emperor, I think his name is Fento, scrambles to pick it up, bowing and stammering apologies. The towering warrior looms over Fento, who is quaking on his knees. The Marine cocks his head, then without a word swings his fist. The massive gauntlet connects with the slave's head in a casual backhand. There's a sickening crunch. Fento's skull just caves in, like someone smashing a melon. His body flops to the deck plates, instantly lifeless, blood pooling. A few gasps slip from our mouths, quickly choked off. Rigo steps forward, daring to address the Marine in a placating tone. "Mighty Lord, please forgive." The World Eater growls, "Spare me your drivel, wretch. This drone was in my way." His voice, distorted by his helmet's grill, is deep and angry, practically feral. Bits of Fento's blood speckle the red armor. To the Marine, that was nothing, a momentary amusement at best. Rigo just bows lower, nodding rapidly, not daring another word. The Chaos Marines move on, like one might brush past a spilled drink. They disappear into an elevator platform heading up to the command spire, their business elsewhere. We all slowly exhale. The line resumes its clattering pace. Another one of us gone, just like that. Delissa's eyes shimmer with tears. She quickly wipes away with a grime-covered hand. I grit my teeth so hard it hurts, fighting a swell of anger and despair. The worst part? I can't even blame the Marines. They are what they are. Brutal, inhuman. It's the masters of this forge who allowed them in among us. They don't care if we're culled randomly, might even appreciate it as more blood for the Blood God, or a motivational lesson. And Rigo? Already dragging Fento's corpse off by the collar, no doubt to chuck it in a recycler or offering pit. By the next shift, there will likely be a new slave assigned to replace him, shipped in from the pens. Life is the cheapest commodity here. To cope, I do what I always do, shove it down and make a joke of it internally. Well, I muse bitterly, that's one way to enforce quiet on the production line. Khorne's warrior just gave us a safety demonstration. Keep working or get your head ventilated. In some twisted way, it even relieves a bit of tension. The danger is past, the unpredictable element is gone. Back to the grinding normalcy of misery we know. Blood, sweat, and more blood. Khorne's influence. Speaking of Khorne, that little incident is a good segue into one aspect of Hellforge life, the influence of the ruinous powers, the Chaos Gods. Officially, the Dark Mechanicum here claim to serve no single god. They're beholden to none, trading with all, using chaos as they see fit. But in practice, each Hellforge often aligns with particular powers, even if they won't admit being slaves to them. Our Hellforge has a definite Khorne streak. The Magos Dominus of the planet, the head honcho, has long-standing pacts with warlords of Khorne's legions. We produce a lot of demon engines for them. Things like juggernaut tanks, enormous chain axe-wielding war machines, and ammunition that thirsts for blood. So, intentionally or not, the whole culture leans Khorne. That means brutality, martial fervor, and frequent bloodletting rituals to appease the blood god, so he continues to bless the forge's output. We slaves get caught up in these events regularly. For example, every 10th cycle, the overseers halt work for an hour for the Red Offering. They round up a small number of workers, usually the weak, the sick, or anyone who pissed off a supervisor, drag them to the central smelter platform and, well, sacrifice them. Sometimes it's a quick decapitation. Sometimes, if the Dark Magi are feeling dramatic, they toss them alive into a running furnace while chanting techno-arcane prayers to Khorne. The screams echo everywhere. The message to us is clear: blood for the blood god, and fear to keep us in line. After such an offering, production tends to spike. Shocker, we all work very diligently for a while. Not just out of fear, there's also a weird superstition among us that if Khorne is satisfied, maybe we'll have fewer accidents or warband attacks for a bit. It's probably false hope, but any hope, even twisted, is clutching at straws we desperately need. Then there are the gladiatorial games. Oh yes, they do entertain us with some good old death matches. Khorne approves of martial prowess and skull-taking, and the Dark Mechanicum isn't above throwing a grand spectacle to honor him and cull the workforce of troublemakers at the same time. Picture an arena carved out in one of the lesser foundry bays, catwalks and cranes reconfigured to form a makeshift coliseum. We slaves are ordered to gather around the edges on high platforms, looking down into the pit. Maybe it breaks the monotony of work, but it's hardly pleasant. They usually force a few slaves who have been caught resisting, stealing, or just randomly chosen to fight each other to the death with crude melee weapons. Sometimes they spice it up by tossing in a captured Xenos beast or a minor demon and watch the terrified humans try to survive. I remember one such celebration not long ago. 5 of our number, including a wiry fellow who used to bunk near me, were dropped into the arena with nothing but sharpened metal rods. Then they released a Chaos Hound, a demonic, skinless, dog-like creature with brass fangs, into the ring. The outcome was obvious. Still, they made us watch as a lesson. The poor folks tried to band together to fend the beast off, but Khorne's hound was too fast, too vicious. It tore them apart one by one, blood splattering while the onlooking crowd of enforcers and cultist overseers cheered and whooped. Some slaves screamed or looked away, but the enforcers forced us to continue watching. I stood there, nails digging into my palms, telling myself, better them than me, better them than me. That's how this place twists you. You feel relief watching others die because it's not you this time, and then you hate yourself for it later in the darkness of your bunk, if you have any humanity left to feel with. After the hound finished its grisly work, a tech priest came down to collect its prize. It lapped at the blood and brought a skull to the Magos. Korn was pleased, apparently, because the Magos announced double rations of grox meat for the surviving workers that night in honor of the blood god's favor. And surprise, they actually delivered. We each got a small cube of something resembling real meat in our gruel. I hadn't tasted meat in years. Was it from an actual grox or some vat-grown substitute? Possibly it was the flesh of the losers, who knows? Still, I chewed every morsel gratefully. That's the depth of depravity here. They make you thankful for eating your neighbor because it means for a moment your belly isn't gnawing itself. So yes, Korn's presence is felt. Not that the other gods don't leave their mark too. We've had periods of strange plagues sweep the hab blocks, Nurgle tipping his hat, no doubt. A few years back, a pox spread that made people's skin blister with pulsating buboes. The Dark Mechanicum's response? They sealed off the infected section and let the disease run rampant, occasionally tossing in a concoction of chemicals. Some victims turned colors, others literally melted into slime. In the end, they pumped the entire area full of gas and killed everyone, then sent servo drones to collect the remains for analysis. I'm sure Papa Nurgle was proud of his little outbreak. He may even have snagged a few loyal survivors from that bunch to become his plague servants. If so, lucky them. At least they'd be out of here. Tzeentch's influence is more subtle. He's the chaos god of change and sorcery. On an industrial world, it's less obvious, but sometimes the tech priests engage in experiments that warp reality in small ways. You get déjà vu frequently, or time flows strangely. I swear one shift felt like 2 days long, and another time I blinked and hours had passed without memory. Maybe I just fell asleep on my feet, but others experienced it too. There are also secret knowledge cults among the tech adepts, where they speak in hushed binaric about the Changer's gifts, presumably forbidden knowledge. For us, common folk, Tzeentch's effect might be glimpsed in the occasionally insane puzzle-like modifications of the factory layout. Corridors, shifting, logic-breaking architecture as I described. It's as if the whole forge is one of the Changer's labyrinths. If you dwell on it, you go mad, so we try not to. Slaanesh. Well, one wouldn't think there's room for pleasure in a place like this, but depravity finds a way. I've heard of some hellforges where the overseers keep pleasure-slave harems or run drug-induced orgy rituals as rewards punishments. Thank the throne, or the void whoever, that here on our hellforge such things are minimal, probably because Korn's ethic of brutality leaves little space for soft excess. Though there are whispers. Some tech priests supposedly take captured youths to serve in their personal workshops, doing emperor knows what to them in the name of sensation. Late at night in the dorm, I've heard distant screams that didn't sound like pain, or maybe pain twisted into pleasure. I don't want to know. That's an area I avoid digging into. Enough nightmares already. By and large, though, the Dark Mechanicum treat us slaves neither to luxury nor to elaborate torment most of the time. They just work us to death. They don't need intricate schemes when simple drudgery and fear does the job. Work or die is a straightforward policy, and it's very effective. Brief respite, if you can call it that. After countless shells assembled and muscles screaming, a rare thing happens. The assembly line grinds to a halt. The conveyor demon's clanking slows, then stops. At first, I worry something's wrong. which often means someone else messed up and we'll all suffer for it. But then a mellifluous voice rings out from the central Vox speaker. Interlude granted. 10 minutes, then resume as commanded. It's not a voice I recognize, likely some higher-up tech priest or servitor announcer, but the key words were interlude granted. A break. Praise the omnis, whatever. I set down the shell carefully and flex my fingers. They're cramped and raw, small cuts on them from sharp edges. No gloves provided, of course. If you want hand protection, you wrap rags around and hope for the best. 10 minutes might not sound like much, but out here it's a blessing. Sometimes they'll do this if an upstream machine needs recalibrating, or if there's a scheduled prayer incantation to the machine spirits. Even Dark Mechanicum machines need occasional rituals, just of a darker sort. It could also be by sheer necessity. Human bodies can only go so long without at least a short rest before errors skyrocket. Like I said, they're pragmatic. I roll my shoulders, feeling the sweat cooling on my skin now that I'm not constantly moving. It's clammy and gross, but I relish the brief relief of weight off my back. A few other slaves sit down where they are, panting. One man literally passes out the second he stops, collapsing into a heap. 2 others drag him aside so he doesn't get trampled when we resume. If he wakes, good for him. If not, he might get left there. Delissa sidles a bit closer to me, leaning on the railing, taking deep gulps of air. I offer her my canteen. We're not supposed to have personal items, but many of us scrounge bottles or containers to keep water in. Hydration stations aren't exactly frequent, and the drinking water tastes like recycled coolant, but it's wet. She gives me a faint, grateful smile and sips. Then she does something bold. She quietly hums a tune, just barely audible over the distant rumble of other sections. I recognize it, an old folk lullaby from somewhere in the Imperium. I can't recall the words. The melody is gentle, wildly out of place here, which is probably why she chose to hum. The contrast itself is a tiny act of rebellion. I find myself almost tearing up at the sound. Emperor's mercy. I hadn't heard a song in years. I don't join in. I can't carry a tune to save my life, and I'm too afraid of drawing attention. But I allow myself to softly tap a finger in time on my thigh. A couple of others nearby notice and share a brief look, a flicker of life in their dull eyes. For a moment in this hellish foundry, there's a whisper of something human, a melody from better times, a shred of culture that isn't dictated by terror. It's fleeting and bittersweet. Delissa stops the humming as soon as Rigo's heavy footsteps clank near. He's doing his rounds, glaring at us to ensure we're not slacking too much even in break. But the memory of it lingers like a tiny glowing coal in the dark. We need those, even if they hurt. In these short breaks, sometimes we even manage a bit of gallows humor. Case in point, old Garen shuffles over towards me. He must have been on a nearby line. He has a limp. One of his legs is augmetic from the knee down, an old industrial accident replaced with a piston rod by the tech priests. He likes to joke it's his blessed foot of the Omnissiah, which kicks him forward when he's too tired. Anyway, he comes up and murmurs, "Did you catch the sight of Rigo nearly pissing himself when that hornate looked his way?" I snort. Yeah, almost felt sorry for the bastard. Almost. Garen chuckles, a dry, raspy sound. One of these days, maybe the Astartes will decide he looks at him funny, eh? Now that would be a show worth watching. Another worker nearby, a younger man missing 2 fingers, bitten off by something from the look of the scar, chimes in quietly. I'd pay an entire week's rations to see Rigo's head popped like a ripe boil by a Marine. We actually laugh. Just a couple of breaths of laughter, quickly suppressed. Laughing is risky. You never know if a servo skull's listening, misinterpreting it as a sign of, I don't even know, contentment? Conspiracy? But damn, it felt good to release a bit of grim mirth. Jokes like these, morbid wishes upon our oppressors, are the only jokes we have. Humor here is as black as the oil we're soaked in. It's a weapon as much as any blade. It keeps you sane, reminds you you're still a person who can find something funny, even if it's horrible. There's a story Garen told me once about when he was young and naive. Well, younger. Nobody lasts to true old age here unless they become a cyborg. He found someone had scrawled graffiti in one of the latrine halls, a crude caricature of a Magos with the words, "Rust in peace, you cog-toothed bastard," under it. I was stunned anyone had the guts or foolishness to do that. He said the whole barracks found it hilarious, a secret little rebellion. Of course, it didn't stay secret. The overseers discovered it within a day. They lined up every slave from that dorm and flogged us all, then cut rations for a week as punishment. We never learned who did the graffiti, probably for the best. If we knew, some coward might have given him up to stop the collective punishment. But here's the thing. Even while we were hungry and nursing wounds that week, people would quietly whisper and snicker about it in the dark. Cog-toothed bastard became an inside joke for that Magos for months. Even now, Garen smirks when he sees that Magos, recalling the cartoonish drawing that nearly cost everyone their hides. Was it worth it? Hard to say. Many suffered, one got a thrill. But the fact that I'm still hearing about it means it mattered in some way. In a place where we are robbed of all control, a bit of anonymous defiance can light a spark. Just, maybe next time deface something in a hidden spot. Please. My back still aches on damp days from that flogging. Our 10 minutes are nearly up. My body already dreads the next stretch of labor, but I also dread the alternative. If break went much longer, the overseers would suspect us of slacking or congregating to plot. Gotta keep moving. As I stand and stretch, I catch a glimpse far across the factory of something magnificent and terrifying. The outline of a Titan. Yes, a god engine of the traitor Titan legions. It's in another bay, partially built or repaired. I can see its immense chassis and a half-constructed arm that ends in a volcano cannon nearly the size of a city block. Even incomplete, it's awe-inspiring. Towering almost to the roof of the forge cavern, surrounded by scaffolds and swarming with tiny figures. Well, normal-sized techs, but tiny compared to it. This Hell Forge regularly services a legio of Chaos Titans. The masters of those engines are here often. The Titan I see might be Legio Mortis, or Legio Furians lineage, given the black and brass and tiger stripes I think I see. Hard to be sure. If you've never seen a Titan up close, it's like a walking skyscraper that carries the firepower of an army. On Mars in the old days, the sight of a warlord Titan striding was cause for celebration. Here, it's a sign to stay the hell away from Bay 42 because they sometimes test the weapons and you do not want to be around when a half-tuned plasma annihilator goes off unexpectedly. Saw that happen once, vaporized a whole section of the forge, workers and all. The Magi just cursed about the setback to the project. Still, I allow myself a moment's fascination. That Titan, it's why some of the tech priests do all this. To create things of godlike might. To meld steel, flesh, and warp into an entity that can topple cities. If only it didn't require a mountain of human skulls as the pedestal. I catch myself fantasizing. What if I climbed into that Titan, took control somehow, and just blasted the hell out of this place? Could I? Would I? It's a fool's dream. Titans require a crew of trained princeps and moderati, all probably as corrupted as their masters. And me? They'd squish me like an ant before I got 2 ladder rungs up its leg. but imagining a fiery explosion consuming the overlords does bring a tiny grin to my face. One day, maybe the Imperium will find this place and unleash Holy Wrath Exterminatus or something. If I'm still alive, I'll gladly be vaporized if it means these heretics get obliterated too. Quick death and vengeance 2 for 1. Not a bad deal. Back to positions, my amplified voice booms. Break time is over. I exchange a final glance with Delissa. She mouths, "Thank you." I'm not sure whether for the water or just for being there. I nod, and we return to our respective stations. The conveyor demon rumbles to life again with a groan that sounds almost disappointed, as if it enjoyed the rest too. Same, buddy, same. I crack my neck and resume the monotonous toil. Insert, twist, lock, slide. Again and again. Each completed shell thuds onto the outgoing belt, off to storage bunkers or straight to the ordnance racks of waiting war machines. There's something utterly absurd about it. I, a half-starved slave, handling weapons that can destroy battle tanks or fortifications, one after the other. The fruits of my labor could slay thousands in the hands of the traitor Marines. I've probably assembled enough shells to flatten a whole Imperial city by now. In a twisted way, I am dangerously productive. If only I could turn one of these shells on my masters. But no, that's ensured impossible. We have no access to firing mechanisms, and any attempt to sabotage would be caught by the machine spirits/demons. Believe me, some have tried to tamper with munitions to cause a malfunction later. They were sniffed out and turned into living candles. Yes, literally. The tech priests encased them in wax and lit them as candles during a ritual. They lasted a surprisingly long time, screaming. The soul of the forge and souls for the forge. While the mindless work continues, let me describe the grander picture of this hell forge. Picture an entire planet covered by industry, spires of metal, foundries the size of cities, pipelines, smokestacks, and sprawling factories, interconnected by a web of maglev rails and cargo haulers. No nature, no greenery, just a landscape of rust, soot, and flickering forge fires painting the horizon. And the noise. Emperor preserve us, the noise. Constant hammering, grinding, booming. Sometimes the ground shudders because deep beneath, in the magma furnaces, something gigantic is being forged, or perhaps something alive in the warp is roaring. It's hard to tell. This whole world is a machine that builds war and runs on pain. They say the hell forges are fed by souls as well as promethium and steel. That's not a metaphor. There are actual furnaces here where souls are consumed. Whether to bind demons to machines or to power insane contraptions, the Dark Mechanicum uses spiritual energy like another fuel source. I've seen how they capture it. There's an ominous tower called the Soul Pyre. It's part thermal plasma reactor, part sacrificial altar. Oh, they throw victims, usually still alive because why waste a perfectly terrified soul, into a core of unearthly fire. And chanting tech sorcerers use hexagrammic circuitry to siphon the departing soul energy into capacitors. It's one of the few times you hear souls, a faint chorus of wails that rise whenever that facility opens its maw. Those of us nearby try to block it out, but you can't entirely. I had a friend, Nix, who worked maintenance near the Soul Pyre. Poor guy swore he started hearing the voices even when he slept. They begged, screamed at him, cursed him. He lasted maybe a month before he purposely threw himself into a slag pit to escape the noise in his head. Ironically, his soul probably got sucked into the pyre anyway. Hellforge humor. You can't even kill yourself properly here without them using you regardless. The output of all this? Weapons, armor, engines of war, sure, but also twisted innovations. The Dark Mechanicum loves to make bizarre things the Imperium would never countenance. We've built demon engines that are half organic, half mechanical roaring demon beasts fused to tank chassis, or giant mechanical spiders with human torsos grafted on. Nightmarish stuff. The Forge's motto might as well be, "Nothing is forbidden." AI, xenotech, demonology, genetic mixing, all the tech heresies the Mechanicus once forbade, here they explore with glee. And sometimes their experiments filter down to us. Case in point, the augmentation program. Every so often, the Magi announce they're seeking volunteers for a special enhancement project. They dress it up nicely, increased strength, no more fatigue, serve the Forge better, and earn favor. Most of us know better than to volunteer, but someone always does. Either a true believer or someone so desperate to escape the daily grind, they'll risk anything. I remember one, a young man named Tevin. He actually wanted to please the Dark Mechanicum, thought if he proved himself, he could rise to become a low-level tech acolyte. So he stepped forward. They took him away to the biolabs. When I saw Tevin next, he was changed. They had replaced most of his lower body with a tracked chassis, like a servitor, and given him multiple arms. At first, he seemed proud. "Look, I am useful, I am strong now." And he was stronger. He could lift heavy loads with his new hydraulic limbs. They put him on a faster work line, and he was outperforming everyone. We thought, okay, maybe this is one of the rare success stories. Then, bits of him started failing. The flesh and the machine weren't in harmony. Without the machine god's sacred balancing, which the Dark Mechanicum doesn't really do, they just slam stuff together with warp magic and call it a day. The implants began to corrode his human parts. He got infections, some metal parts inexplicably rusted, or his flesh around them necrotized. They'd fix him, then another issue would arise. Each fix made him less human. Replace another chunk here, another augmetic graft there. Within half a year, Tevin wasn't recognizable. He had become essentially a full servitor, lobotomized because his organic brain succumbed to madness or a spreading warp cancer. They ended up using him as a floor sweeper, his dream of advancement ironically twisted into the very fate he tried to avoid by volunteering eternal mindless labor. That's the pitfall of any promise here. It's always a monkey's paw. You get what you asked for in the worst way. No one volunteers anymore if they can help it. If the Magi need subjects, they just grab us by force now. At least there's some grim satisfaction that they lost the carrot approach and have to rely on the stick completely. Education, or the lack thereof. Question often asked, do we learn anything here? Any skills? The Dark Mechanicum still needs trained personnel machine operators, minor tech adepts to oversee basic systems, etc. They can't do everything with a handful of magi and a horde of mindless servitors. So, yes, there is a sort of education for a select few of us. If someone shows a spark of intelligence or technical aptitude, they'll be taken aside for training. But don't imagine kindly professors and comfy classrooms. Think more along the lines of a brain implant jammed into your skull that force feeds data and binaric programming into your cortex. If you survive the implantation and your mind holds together, congratulations. You're now a junior tech thrall and get to boss around the rest of us. Slightly. If you fail, you either become a drooling vegetable or you snap and become a risk. After which they usually offer your gray matter as a meal to a demon engine or wire you into a cogitator as a biological processor. I'm actually glad I never showed any such promise. I might be articulate enough now, maybe surprising for a lowly slave, but mostly that's self-taught recollection from my life before this place. I keep my head down and pretend to be dumber than I am. Let them think I'm just a good worker, nothing more. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down, as they say. I've seen bright ones like Soren. Kid could jury-rig a broken loader servitor with scraps. Get noticed. They made him an acolyte intern. Sounds nice. But next thing, he's walking around with that haunted look, half his skull replaced by a glowing brain cogitator that forces him to spout tech incantations like an automaton. He doesn't even recognize me anymore. So no thank you, I'll keep my hidden wit to myself. For the majority, education is just learning through doing. You survive long enough on a station, you learn how to do it better, to avoid pain. We pass along tips to newcomers when possible, though talking to new arrivals is risky as they're heavily watched. But I hate seeing someone lose an arm to a mistake I could have warned them about. So sometimes I'll whisper, "Mind your left when the piston strikes, it kicks back," or "Add an extra drop of coolant there or it overheats." Little things that might keep them alive. Knowledge is power, but here knowledge shared is survival. Not that it always matters. Sometimes the error isn't the workers at all, but the malice of the machine spirit or demon within. How do you train someone to predict an unpredictable, malevolent ghost in the machine? You can't. You just pray to whichever deity won't kill you for praying and stay alert. A new arrival, remembering why it's so bad. I should mention how I even got here. See, not everyone on a Hellforge was born to it or grew up in a cult. Many, like me, had normal lives in the Imperium once. I was a nobody from some hive world. Voland Prime, an industrial planet, but nothing like this. I worked in a manufactorum there, but under the Imperial Creed. Shifts, the occasional holy day off, and of course reciting the Omnissiah litanies to appease machine spirits. Hard life, but I had family. We had the Emperor's light and hope. Then war came. A Chaos War band raided the system. Next thing I knew, the sky was falling in flames, and amidst the invasion I was captured, herded with hundreds of others onto a cursed transport ship. That's how many of us end up on Hellforges, spoils of war, human resources to be exploited. They packed us in dark holes, chanting around us to keep us docile, some sort of spell maybe. When we arrived, they branded us, registered us like cattle, and distributed us to various labor pools. I remember the sheer terror and disbelief in my first weeks. It was so much worse than I could have imagined. The sheer cruelty and horror broke many quickly. Lots of initial captives attempted escape or revolt early on. I was one of them, actually, or almost. There was a moment I'll never forget. A group of us newbies planned to rush a security post, overwhelm a guard or two, and flee into the maintenance tunnels. We didn't even know where we'd go from there. Just away. We tried. We managed to beat down a lone overseer with pipes and fists and took his keys. I still recall the flush of hope, the surge of adrenaline as we slipped into a side corridor. It felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. That's when it showed up, a demon summoned likely as a guardian of the perimeter. I didn't see where it came from. One moment it wasn't there, the next, reality kind of folded, and this thing slithered out. A horror of shadow and metal, many limbs, many eyes. It fell upon our small group like a rabid beast. I ran. Yes, I admit it. I broke and ran while the others fought and died. Their screams. Emperor, it was awful. One by one, silenced with wet gurgles or pleas, turning into nothing. I stumbled right into the arms of waiting guards. I expected execution or torture, but they just dragged me to the factory floor and let me resume working. That was the most jarring part. They didn't punish me at all, not directly. They knew that witnessing that was punishment enough. And they were right. I never tried escaping again. I think they left me alive as a lesson to others. Look, one returned, broken and terrified. For a long time, the guilt of surviving ate at me. But in this place, you can't cling to guilt. It'll consume what little sanity you have. So I hardened myself and learned to survive within the system. New arrivals still come, every so often when the Dark Mechanicum purchase or receive a batch from a Chaos fleet. They're easy to spot, looking around with wide eyes, flinching at every noise. We hardened veterans don't even look at them with pity anymore, just a resigned sadness. We know most of them will be dead or broken soon. The lucky might adapt, turn that shock into numb acceptance swiftly. The unlucky cry or pray out loud or refuse orders. Then we have to watch them get whipped raw or see their tongue cut out for blaspheming the dark gods with pleas to the Emperor. It's harsh, but if I can, I'll whisper to one, keep your head down, do what they say, live. Some listen, some are too panicked to hear. One kid, barely 14 standard years maybe, arrived last month. She had been a refugee off some war zone, I gathered. She kept sobbing, asking for her mother. It was heartbreaking. I tried to guide her in line, but a guard took offense at her noise. They dragged her out, and, Emperor forgive them, nailed her hands to a post as an example. She hung there for hours, alive and wailing, while we worked around her. By the time they took her down, she was unconscious from pain. I don't know if she lived after. They carted her to med lab, which often doubles as experimentation lab. I hope she died, it'd be kinder. These are the scenes that haunt me when I do manage to snatch some sleep. And there's no counselor or confessor to tell, just the cold embrace of the pillow, or more often, a coil of cable that I use as a pillow, and my own internal pep talks to not lose it completely. So, the only retirement plan. Here. You might wonder, what happens when we get too old or injured to work? Does the Dark Mechanicum let us go, or give us lighter duty? They have two fates for the unproductive, recycling or repurposing. Recycling is literal. As I've hinted, they don't waste biomass. There are rendering plants where bodies, dead or alive, are thrown into huge grinders and chemical vats. Out the other end comes protein slurry, nutrient broth, and organic pulp that can be used for fertilizer. Yes, they do have some fungus farms for food, albeit nothing like a pleasant farm. It's all underground luminescent mold vats. The nutrient broth likely ends up as the base for the corpse starch ration bars. So if you die, you might become tomorrow's lunch for your comrades. Grim? Absolutely. But also efficient. The only mercy is that they typically kill you before tossing you in, usually. Repurposing is turning you into a servitor or some other cyborg slave. If your mind isn't useful, strip it and keep the body. A lot of injured workers who lose limbs or get mangled are converted like that if they can't return to normal work quickly. They erase higher brain function, implant a control unit, patch up the body with augmetics, and voila. You're now a zombie robot. They prefer criminals and captured enemy soldiers for servitors normally, but we're fodder for it too. I try to work well enough that I'm never retired that way. I'd prefer to die as myself, or as close to myself as I remain, rather than exist as an unknowing drone until I rust. It's a thin hope that I'll get to choose that end, but I hold on to it. Sometimes, if someone is on the brink, too weak, sick, or losing their mind, fellow slaves will do a kindness, an accident that kills them swiftly so they don't end up on the butcher's table. It's risky. If caught, it's murder of resources, punishable severely. But say a heavy engine block slips from a crane at the right moment. Could be just the unfortunate victim's clumsiness, right? We've done that once or twice for those who begged for an end. It's perhaps the only true compassion left here. A mercy kill. I haven't reached that point personally yet. Despite it all, some stubborn spark in me wants to keep going, maybe see something change. I don't even know what. Freedom? Highly unlikely. Revenge? One can fantasize, but if I give up, then I really am just a piece of meat waiting to be ground. So I endure. Out of spite, perhaps. Spite for my captors, to deny them my surrender. They have my body, they torment my mind, but my spirit, battered as it is, I keep it flickering, if only to curse them with it quietly. The final hour of the shift. We've been at it for what must be the better part of a day now. Exhaustion is a lead weight on every limb. My hands move sluggishly, almost on autopilot from muscle memory. That's dangerous. One lapse in concentration and I might mishandle a shell or get my fingers caught in a lift clamp. I've seen someone's hand crushed to jelly that way. That man wailed for an hour before they mercy killed him. Couldn't reattach the hand and he went into shock. So I bite my tongue, literally, to jolt myself alert. The coppery taste of blood in my mouth pairs well with the omnipresent scent of carnage in the air. Somewhere, a shift whistle blows, a steam pipe shriek that is the signal for shift change. Blessed sound, we're actually being rotated out. Sometimes they skip a rotation if targets aren't met, working us to double shifts. But looks like we did okay. Or maybe the machines needed downtime. Whatever the reason, I am grateful. A wave of relief courses through the line. The next crew shuffles in from a side gate. Poor sods, they look as tired as we are. Likely they just woke from their own snatches of sleep. No bright-eyed, fresh crew here, just an alternating current of half-dead labor. But at least it's their turn now, not mine. I finish the last shell on my bench and set it aside. My back protests as I straighten up. Something pops in my spine. Ow. But I smile faintly at the pain. It means I'm off duty for now. Provided nothing insane happens in the next moments, I have a few hours to myself, or rather to collapse in the barracks or perform whatever menial personal chores needed. Rigo marches us off the line through a processing checkpoint where servitor drones scan to ensure we didn't steal any tool or part, as if we'd dare. Plus, where would we hide a giant shell casing? Up our butts? The scanner occasionally beeps at some anomaly. Usually, it's just leftover residue or a piece of scrap stuck to a boot. Still, they treat it with utmost paranoia. They've been on edge for smuggling ever since a group of slaves managed to sneak small weapon components out and assemble an improvised pistol. That was 2 years ago. Those revolutionaries actually shot a low-level tech priest before being caught and flayed. Now security is tight as a drum. I couldn't steal a cogwheel without 6 sensors noticing. After clearance, we trudge as a group back towards the hab block. The way overlaps with another path, and for a moment I see the incoming shift crew stepping onto the line we vacated. Among them, I spot a face I recognize. It's that breeding pair man from the dormitory. I'll call him Gear. Not his full serial, just a shorthand we use. He's one of the unlucky ones whose entire family was entangled in this mess. By a twist of fate some months ago, he was selected to mate. The Dark Mechanicum periodically pairs strong slaves to produce offspring. Gotta keep the workforce replenished without relying solely on raids. They want hardy, warp-resistant stock. It's clinical and forced. You get matched, you do the act under observation, and then you likely never see each other again. They send any resulting infants to creches to raise collectively. But Gear and the woman he was paired with, I'll call her Adina, actually bonded. In the brief encounter, huddled in a cold chamber with voyeurs monitoring, They somehow manage to find a spark of warmth. It's rare, but not impossible. Humans will be human, even in hell. They conceived a child, a baby girl, from what I gathered, taken away at birth. And though they were sent to different shifts, occasionally our schedules overlap enough that he can catch a glimpse of Adina or vice versa. I've seen it. Their eyes meet across a hall for a second, and in that second there's a world of emotion conveyed: longing, love, heartbreak. They know better than to openly fraternize. That's punished severely. Unauthorized commingling, they call it. But they hold on to the thought of each other. I worry for them. Love is dangerous here. It's a weakness to exploit if noticed. But I also envy them. They have something pure in this filth, even if fleeting. Gear once quietly told me during a maintenance task we shared that when he's about to break, he clings to a memory. The way Adina whispered his name in the dark, just once, gently. It keeps him going. I nodded, pretending to understand, though in truth, I've almost forgotten what love feels like. The only love I have is a distant one for humanity as a concept, or the Emperor, perhaps, though I feel abandoned. Personal love? No time or space for that. As we pass, Gear catches my eye. We can't speak, but I read the silent question. Did you see her? Is she okay? Adina was in my shift group earlier, but in a different subsection. I did notice her at the meal cauldron briefly. She looked alive, nothing obviously wrong. I give Gear the subtlest nod and a quick blink of affirmation. He closes his eyes a moment as if in thanks, then faces forward to march on as Rigo hollers at them to pick up pace. Not a word exchanged, but a crucial message delivered. Small acts of solidarity like that, that's how we endure. Now it's back to the barracks. Usually, after a work cycle, we get a ration allotment, if rations are available. Maybe a communal drink of water. Then lights out. Hygiene is laughable. There's a trough where we can splash our faces if it's not filled with slime, and once a month we might be hosed down en masse with a mixture of recycled water and decontaminant that burns the skin but at least kills the itchy mold growing on us. They don't care for our comfort or appearance. It's all utilitarian. I scrape off the worst of the grime from my arms with a rag as I walk. The skin underneath is pallid, except where it's scarred or burnt. I think I had a healthier complexion once. Hard to remember. A short night, a strong finish. Back at the dorm, I collapse onto my bunk with a groan of relief. Every muscle throbs. The moment I stop, I become aware of a dozen minor injuries. Blisters on my hands, a cut on my forearm. When did I get that? Probably a metal shard. My feet swollen and sore. But hey, nothing's broken and I'm alive. As victories go, I'll take it. Others are similarly sprawled on their bunks or the floor. Some are already asleep. A deep comatose slumber of pure exhaustion. That one older woman in the corner might actually be dead. It's hard to tell. If she doesn't move by morning, then we'll know. I stare up at the ceiling, a tangle of pipes and cables draped with cobweb-like dust. There's a faded graffiti etched there, with what tool I can't guess, maybe an old nail, that says, "Emperor, have mercy." It's probably decades old, maybe from the original Imperial workers of this forge world before it fell to chaos. A ghost from the past. Mercy. Not much of that around. I feel something wet on my cheek and realize, to my surprise, that a tear has fallen. Just one. I wipe it away quickly, hoping nobody saw. Crying openly can draw ridicule or worse. People here don't always react kindly to signs of weakness, as it scares them about their own buried feelings. I'm not even sure why I teared up. Maybe the song from Delissa earlier, or seeing Fento's brutal death, or just cumulative anguish. Who knows? I swallow it back. Across the aisle, old Garen is sitting up, back against the wall. He catches my eye and gives me a faint, knowing nod. He doesn't speak. He rarely does in the barracks, saving his voice, I guess. But I imagine if he did, he'd say, "It's all right, lad. We made it through another one. Sometimes that's the only condolence. We're still here." I try to empty my mind and get what rest I can. Sometimes I recite litanies, mentally half-remembered prayers to the Emperor or little engineering chants. Other times I count, adding up shells I made or reciting numeric codes. There's a calming effect in pretending to be a machine counting endless numbers, ironically. Tonight, or whatever passes for night, I decide to indulge a thought I keep buried. What if I could see home again? Fallen Prime, my hive city, my family. Are any of them still alive? Do they assume I died when the chaos attacked? Likely. If by some miracle I showed up, would they even accept me after all I've seen and done, under duress, but still? Probably not. The Inquisition would deem me tainted beyond purification. It's a foolish dream. But I let myself picture the old hab block on a quiet evening, the glow of lumen globes, my sister cooking corpse starch stew, complaining about the taste, my brother tinkering with a faulty servitor's arm, cursing in frustration. I'd even take that bland stew happily, laugh at my brother's colorful language. Emperor, I miss mundane problems. I know I'll never have that life back. But thinking of it reminds me that this place is not all there is. A world beyond this exists, even if I'll never walk it again. It means these horrors aren't normal. They might be my normal now, but objectively, this is an aberration. The thought oddly comforts me. It means I'm not crazy for hating this, for hurting. It should be hated. It should hurt. If I ever started thinking all this was perfectly fine, that's when I'd truly have lost myself. On that note, I drift into a fitful half-sleep. There's no quiet, distant clangs and screams persist, but you tune it out as white noise after a while. My dreams, if any, are fleeting and jumbled. Red skies, skulls, the Titan's silhouette striding across a burning plain. I see Dentrex's mechanical eyes and jolt awake at least once, heart hammering. Only a nightmare as usual. Too soon the wake-up siren howls again. My body protests as I force it to move. Every sleep feels like just a few minutes. Could have been hours, could have been less. Time truly is messed up here. There's a saying among us. The days are long, but the years are short. It blends together so much. I swing off the bunk, nearly stumbling on weak legs until I stretch them. Another cycle begins, and so it goes, round and round, an insane carousel powered by blood and fear. But I promised a strong finish, didn't I? Some closing line or observation to drive it home. So here it is. This is life on a hell forge. A life of endless labor under iron-fisted masters who have traded their humanity for madness and metal. It's a cruel joke of an existence where each day's survival is both a victory and a sentence to endure more. Where hope is a four-letter word you try not to utter, and kindness flickers only in the darkest shadows between comrades in misery. I've seen sights that would break the minds of lesser men, and I carry scars outside and in that will never heal. I've forgotten the taste of joy, but I remember the necessity of laughter, however bitter and dark, to spit in the eye of despair. I will likely die here, whether tomorrow in some gruesome accident or years from now as an spent husk thrown to the flames. No hero will swoop in at the last moment to save us. No grand rebellion will overthrow our dominion. And if one bruise, trust me, it'll be crushed just as grandly. This is not a tale of triumph. It's a simple record of surviving, one heartbeat to the next, in a place where life has the value of scrap metal. And yet, As I join the new march to the forges, I catch Dallas's eye and she offers the faintest wink. Garen cracks his neck and mutters a sardonic quip about another beautiful day in the machine's paradise. Gear, walking a few rows ahead, straightens his back, ready to endure, spurred by the thought of his distant beloved. All around, battered people refuse to just lie down and die. Not today. We'll go on. One more shift, one more hour, whatever it takes. Out of pure, stubborn will, if nothing else. That perhaps is the final truth of Hellforge life. In this manufactured hell, we are the one variable the Dark Mechanicum can't fully control. Our bodies they command, our souls they torment. But the human spirit, even starved, beaten and shrouded in darkness, is a tricky thing. It finds cracks to slip through, in a sarcastic joke, in a secret song hummed, in a fleeting look of love, in a refusal to give up. They forge weapons for galactic war here, yes, but inadvertently they also forge us, tempering what's left of our humanity in the fires of suffering. We come out harder, sharper, not better, perhaps, but different than the docile drones they want. And one day, if those masters slip, even a little, they might find the tools they created have edges that cut both ways. Until then, we endure. I take a breath of hot, acrid air and step forward into the furnace light as the next work siren blares. Life on a Hellforge goes on, a brutal monotony laced with horror. And so do I. After all, as we often joke grimly, there's no rest for the wicked. And here, everyone is wicked. The masters by choice, and we, the slaves, simply by survival. Welcome to Hellforge. You don't truly live here, you simply try not to die for as long as possible. And if there's any meaning in it at all, it's this. In the worst imaginable circumstances, we still quietly remain human, in defiance of a place designed to crush every ounce of that. In the heart of darkness, even a faint, cynical laugh or a whispered prayer is a triumph of the soul. Short of an actual miracle, that's the only victory we'll ever taste. But we'll take it. In hell, sometimes a small, rebellious spark is all you have, and amazingly, it's enough to get you through another damned day. End of transmission. The forges call, and I must answer.